Guys, I've hit the end. I'm at the end of my sanity. I don't even know what to say to this guy. He's rendered me completely speechless. How does this thing exist? Because my brain is leaking out of my ears just from looking at him. How are the people who made this guy still alive? How do you fuck up a concept this badly? How do you fail at every possible front? This fight is so terrible, so fucking awful, that it makes me want to go back to everything I've ever reviewed and do them again. Just because next to this guy, everything else looks 10 times as solid. I knew that Senator Armstrong had an infamous reputation amongst gamers, but I never, even in my wildest fantasies, could have imagined a worse train wreck of failure than what has been pushed out before me. Oh god, now I have to do the rest of the review. Ryan and Bladewolf versus Senator Armstrong and Metal Gear Excelsis and Geckos. What was even the plan for this? This seems like the writers just got bored of writing the ending about halfway through and just said, fuck it, let's just have a great big Godzilla battle at the end because they couldn't think of a good way to end this game's complete nonsense. What makes this even worse is that the final boss wasn't built up to the ending at all, which makes sense considering this guy is coming from fucking nowhere to just have a punch-up. Now, I will give him credit for Metal Gear Excelsis part of the fight, because it's actually pretty cool, but being the Godzilla battle trope, it's actually super easy to defeat, and the parrying times are a bit wonky, and the added geckos are annoying is another thing to dodge around, but thankfully Excelsis is actually killing them for me! It was a fun start, but that initial good times gets skull-punched into the ground for what the actual fight is supposed to be when Excelsis is defeated, when Raiden is able to pull off one of Excelsis' blades, and then use it to chop Excelsis into little pieces. Holy fucking god, look at this! We then get up to Senator Armstrong, who's so very excited to share with Ryan why he's planning on continuing his World Marshal business plans to keep the war economy going, and he's going to directly benefit. Oh sure, he starts talking about the end benefit being a return to everyone having their own thoughts and actions again, and that by itself is ridiculous, because not everyone can just go around doing whatever they want. There needs to be an order to society. Ryan can see past this as being an excuse for wanting to become a war profiteer, actually being halfway believable to Armstrong before he breaks that down to get a free hit on the guy. Okay, so you might be thinking, this guy is a politician, how could he possibly be a threat to Ryan? Well... Yeah, being the owner of a military cyborg company meant that of course he would be full of upgrades himself, and that one upgrade being nanomachines that allow his body to harden into metal to avoid damage, which results in one of the most painfully difficult bosses in the universe before the changing of the swords mid-fight that I talked about in the second Jetstream video, but before that, this guy can hit you for 20% on his one punch with no healing items for about 2 phases of his fight, where the only damage that you've done is about 10% total. So yeah, that's fucking fair. Honestly, this part of the fight isn't fair because it messes with the player themselves. When you get to this type of situation where the player is beaten down this hard and you barely do damage to the enemy, then the usual response is that tactics are involved. And they're not in this case. You just have to avoid damage until the game arbitrarily checkpoints because they wanted to do the story without a good fight. After that, Senator Armstrong stops fucking around and, honest to God, starts punching Ryan into Metal Gear Excelsis enough to the point where it explodes, dropping both people into the crater surrounded by its burning parts, where the last part of the battle takes place after giving Jetstream's sword to Ryan, which apparently has enough power to slice through Armstrong's heart and body, and this is the point where any semblance of logic or restraint was abandoned on the bus before the developers went into the loony bin in order to create this madman, now running entirely on anime logic. Armstrong now has constant armored skin, and all of his attacks get lava involved somehow. He punches the ground and lava spouts appear. Lava-covered punches, and finally he's able to pick up one of the legs from Excelsis and beat Ryan in the face with it, which requires pinpoint blade slashes to hit or it's an instant kill. Well, actually it deals 100% damage, but most likely kills you. Now, developers, I can see the logic going into this, but requiring a QTE-esque avoidance of an attack using a mechanic only seen once in the game does make this part of the game incredibly annoying. Although about after 7 attempts and you finally hit every slash correctly, the game relents a bit and gives you some healing items, and at this point all it takes is pattern recognition to take this guy out. But once he hits around 100%, he activates one of the most bullshit, infuriating, stupid ass tropes that any player will fume in intrepid anger at the mention with flashbacks to other bosses who've used self-healing abilities. Yeah, this guy pulls a self-healing ability right out of his ass when he gets to half health. Of course he gets a full heal the first time because the player doesn't know how to combat it, so that's fair. To prove my point, the only time that I could say that this was done right was during the end fight, where after you couldn't find him for like 20 minutes, he starts to photosynthesize. I was fighting a person, right? Guys? Well, whatever, I shouldn't flash back to better boss battles. After the self-heal ass pull, there's no more strings to his bow. Finish him off with a QTE blade clash and finish him off by pulling some Mortal Kombat shit and crushing his heart into a bloody pulp. Now, while I do hate gimmicks latching off this long-ass fight that was only long because he decided to be so fucking difficult with his battle's parts, ultimately, this is how you do a final battle. Something difficult that requires pattern recognition and pairing up a confident offense and defense plan in order to combat your foe. So again, Metal Gear Rising beats out Metal Gear Solid on the greater details. Even if the story of this battle makes no fucking sense, comes out of frickin' nowhere, and is hard as balls to the point where it's controller-throwingly frustrating to some, and honestly, I don't blame those players because it's right on that unfairness line with how difficult Senator Armstrong is. But that's how you do a final boss, and that's all there is to it. So here's my final scores for Senator Armstrong, showing that since his story was directly counterintuitive to the point of build-up, he's earned a 0 for that, and otherwise his good gameplay mechanics have its issues, but it leaves the player with at least some achievement in the ordeal. So there is something that the Armstrong fight has to stand on. Now, would you believe this? This game actually has DLC story packs available for it. So rather than doing the final game review next, there's actually going to be more boss fights and Let's Plays fleshing out this world. I'm excited and I hope you are too. So I'll see you guys next time, and as always, my final words are victory for gamers.